He doesn't lie. The 40-year-old's secret finally exposed. The courtroom was silent, so silent that you could hear the hum of the air conditioner and the soft rustle of papers in the back row. Everyone's eyes were on the woman standing near the judge's bench, her hands trembling, her eyes filled with tears. The DNA results had just been read aloud. After 40 years, the judge said slowly, the evidence proves that the man responsible for the 1985 murder of Emily Carter was none other than her own father, Richard Carter. Gasps filled the room. A man in his 60s, pale as chalk, dropped his face into his hands. The woman, now grown, felt her knees weaken. Her father, the man who had tucked her into bed, who had kissed her goodnight the very evening before her mother vanished, was a murderer. The truth, buried for decades, had finally been uncovered by science that didn't even exist when the crime happened. She could hardly breathe. The reporters outside were already shouting into their cameras. 40 years later, DNA reveals the killer within the family. But inside, everything stood still. The woman's name was Sarah Carter, and as she looked at her father being handcuffed, all she could think was, how did no one see this coming? Then, as Richard Carter turned his head toward her, he whispered something under his breath, words that froze her in place. I didn't kill her, Sarah. But you know who did. Sarah's heart pounded. What did he mean by that? And just like that, the entire story began to unravel. 40 years earlier, in a quiet suburban neighborhood outside Cleveland, Ohio, everything seemed perfect. The Carters were the kind of family people admired. Richard was a respected architect, Emily was a warm-hearted teacher, and their daughter Sarah was just 8 years old. Every Saturday morning, Emily would take Sarah to the local park while Richard worked on his drawings in his home office. They lived in a small white house with blue shutters, a garden full of lilies, and a golden retriever named Max. But on one cool autumn night in 1985, everything changed. Emily Carter disappeared. That evening had started like any other. The family had dinner together, spaghetti and garlic bread, Sarah's favorite. After dinner, Sarah watched the Golden Girls while her parents cleaned up. Around 9 p.m., Richard kissed his wife on the cheek and said he was going to the basement to work on his blueprints. Emily smiled, saying she'd join him after finishing the dishes. She never did. The next morning, Sarah woke up to find her dad pacing the kitchen. The police were already there, their radios crackling. The back door was open, and Emily's car was still in the driveway. Her purse was gone, but her shoes and coat were still by the door. Everyone searched for weeks. Flyers went up on lampposts. News reporters stood on the Carters' front lawn, asking if there had been any signs of trouble. But there weren't. Emily had no enemies, no debts, no reason to run away. 3 weeks later, her body was found in a wooded area 10 miles away. The cause of death, blunt force trauma. The town was shaken. The police had a few suspects, a neighbor who'd been acting strangely, a delivery driver with a past record, but no one was ever charged. They questioned Richard, of course, but he had an alibi. He claimed he'd been home all night working in his basement, and no one could prove otherwise. With no DNA testing available at the time, the case eventually went cold. Years passed. Sarah grew up, went to college, and tried to move on. Her father sold the house and relocated to Florida. They spoke less and less over time. Every time she asked about her mother, he'd sigh and say, "Some mysteries aren't meant to be solved, Sarah." But she could never shake the feeling that something didn't add up. She remembered noises that night, the sound of a door slamming, muffled voices, something breaking. She remembered waking up in the middle of the night and seeing her father's shirt with what looked like a dark stain. When she'd asked about it, he told her he'd spilled coffee. For decades later, in 2025, Sarah decided to try one last time to get answers. A true crime documentary series had been covering unsolved cases, and one of the producers encouraged her to submit her mother's evidence for new DNA testing. Old items from the case, a piece of Emily's blouse, a blood-stained rag, a hair found near the body, were carefully tested again using modern technology. When the results came back, Sarah nearly dropped the envelope. The DNA on the rag matched her father. She sat frozen for hours, staring at the report. Could her dad, the man who raised her alone, who cried every anniversary of her mother's death, really be a murderer? She decided she needed to confront him. When she flew down to Florida, she found him frail and sick, living alone in a small retirement home. When she showed him the report, his face went pale. Then, slowly, he said, "See, that night I found her already gone." Sarah's voice shook. "Then why didn't you call the police?" Richard leaned back, eyes glassy. "Because I knew who did it. And they were still in the house." Before she could ask another question, Richard began coughing violently. Nurses rushed in, and the room filled with chaos. But those words, "they were still in the house," echoed in Sarah's mind. That night, she went back to her hotel, unable to sleep. She opened the old police file again, scrolling through names and photos. Then she noticed something she had never seen before, a mention of a small bloodstain found on the child's nightgown. Her breath caught. The child's nightgown. Her nightgown. And in that moment, Sarah realized something that made her blood run cold. Maybe her father wasn't lying after all. Sarah couldn't stop shaking. She sat alone in her hotel room, the old case files spread out across the bed. The words glared back at her. Trace blood sample discovered on child's nightgown, sample too small for testing at the time. Her nightgown. She was only 8 years old when her mother was murdered. How could her mother's blood have ended up on her clothes? And what did her father mean when he said, "They were still in the house"? Sarah's hands trembled as she grabbed her phone. She called Detective Laura Jensen, the cold case investigator who'd helped her reopen the case. "Detective," Sarah whispered, "you need to test that blood stain on my nightgown. Please. It's still in the evidence box." There was a pause on the other end. "That evidence is over 40 years old, Sarah. If it's even still viable." "Please," Sarah cut in, her voice cracking. "Just test it." Detective Jensen agreed. The sample was sent to the state lab for advanced testing. It would take a few weeks, but Sarah couldn't wait that long. She needed answers. The next morning, she returned to her father's retirement home. The nurse told her he was sleeping, recovering from the previous day's collapse. Sarah quietly entered the room. Richard's eyes fluttered open when he saw her. "You have to tell me," she said softly. "What happened that night?" Richard took a deep, shaky breath. "Your mother, she found out something. Something that would have ruined everything." "What are you talking about?" Sarah asked, her pulse quickening. "She wasn't supposed to know," he whispered. "But when she did, she confronted the person in the house. There was a fight. I heard it. I ran upstairs, but it was too late." "Who was it?" Sarah's voice trembled. Richard's eyes filled with tears. I can't say. Dad, you've been carrying this for 40 years. But Richard just turned his head away, coughing hard. Nurses rushed in again, and Sarah was ushered out of the room. She never got her answer. 2 days later, Richard Carter died. Sarah felt hollow. The man who'd lived his life under a shadow of suspicion was gone, taking his secret with him. But then, a week later, Detective Jensen called. "Sarah, are you sitting down?" Sarah's heart dropped. "Yes, what is it?" "The lab confirmed it. The blood stain on the nightgown was your mother's." Sarah swallowed hard. "So it's true. She was in my room that night." "That's not all," the detective continued. "There was another DNA profile found mixed in with your mother's blood. It's not your father's, and it's not yours." Sarah's chest tightened. "Then whose is it?" "That's what we're trying to figure out," Jensen said. "The lab is running it through the National DNA database now. We should have a match soon." That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. Her thoughts raced back to that night in 1985. The storm outside, the shouting she'd heard, the sound of glass breaking. She remembered hiding under her blanket, clutching her teddy bear, too scared to move. She had thought her parents were arguing, but what if someone else was in the house? Days passed. Sarah tried to distract herself with work, but every time the phone rang, her heart skipped a beat. Then one afternoon, the detective called again. "We have a match," Jensen said. "The DNA belongs to a man named Brian Wilcox." "Who is that?" Sarah asked. "He was your father's business partner," the detective said. "They worked together on construction projects back in the 1980s. Sarah's eyes widened. "I remember him. He used to come to the house all the time. Yes, the detective said grimly. And according to police records, he was arrested for assault in 1986, just a year after your mother's murder. He died in 1992. The DNA match is a 99.9% certainty. Sarah felt sick. So, Brian killed my mother? That's what the evidence suggests, Jensen said. But here's where it gets strange. We found letters, old correspondence between your father and Brian. It looks like your father knew he did it, but covered for him. Sarah's voice cracked. Why would he do that? Because, the detective said quietly, your father's business was in financial trouble back then. Brian had loaned him money, a lot of it, and your mother found out. She was going to expose them both. Sarah sat in stunned silence. Her mother had confronted Brian that night, maybe threatened to go to the police, and Brian had silenced her. Her father must have found the body afterward and panicked, terrified of losing everything. 40 years of guilt. 40 years of silence. Tears rolled down Sarah's cheeks. The truth hurt more than she'd imagined. Her father hadn't killed her mother, but he'd let everyone believe he did. To protect himself. To protect his reputation. She thought it was finally over. But later that night, as she sat in her living room, there was a knock at her door. It was a man she didn't recognize, tall, gray-haired, wearing a worn leather jacket. Are you Sarah Carter? He asked. She nodded cautiously. Yes, who are you? The man hesitated. My name's Mark Wilcox. Brian Wilcox was my father. Sarah froze. I know what the police said, Mark continued, his voice low. But they're wrong about one thing. Sarah frowned. What do you mean? Mark's eyes darkened. My dad didn't act alone that night. He told me before he died, there was someone else in that house. Sarah's blood ran cold. Who? She whispered. Mark stepped closer, his expression grim. You.